using the dynamic Dresden's rulers in 18 and 30 degrees. Now, all the projects in the book are written in both 18 and 30 degrees, and were tested as such. Where the instructions veer off, they're different for 18 and 30 degrees. Those instructions are color-coded to coordinate with the packaging of the Dresden rulers. So if you start off on the 18-degree project, you're not going to accidentally jump over into the 30. There's color coding going on. So I'm proud of that. Now, those rulers, what we've done with the rulers is we've used very thin lines so that we can be more accurate. And those lines are broken, so you can see that the edge of your fabric is centered under that line, and that will increase accuracy. Also, I've got the 1-inch increments on one side of the ruler and the 1/2 inch on the other side, so that you're far less likely to misread the ruler and use the line you didn't intend to use. Also, there is a center line right here, and this opens up some really fun things to do. I'll bring in this little quilt here that has symmetry in the fabric, and you see I've got this kaleidoscopic effect going on. And if you take a look at those seams between the wedges, they're matching up quite nicely, and that starts with accurate cutting. So over here, this little strip of fabric, I want to show you that this is a symmetrical print. So instead of cutting around templates, which I still cut around templates for a big spaced out prints, but these that are closely printed, I can start with a strip and place the appropriate portion of the ruler on the print according to what the project in the book says, and I can put that center line down the center of that motif and cut on each side, and then it's far more accurate than with templates. So I really like that special feature about these rulers, the 18 and the 30 degrees. Okay, now this part is going to look familiar to all of you. So to make the pointed wedges, we start with a wedge, right sides together, sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then I want to press that seam allowance open. So the way I do that is use my Prairie pointer tool, which you are all familiar with. It goes into this wedge like that, and my fingers are kind of pudgy, so I like a little tool, I like this curved awl, to go in there and press that seam open, and then this little flap of fabric here can be a trouble to us, so I flatten that down with the handle of that tool. Now I'll turn this right side out, and here's where we usually have a problem poking a hole in the end of the Dresden. But I go in again with the Prairie pointer tool, and I'm pointing it downward. I want that tip to go underneath that little triangle flap of fabric, and look at that little point. It's a thrill every time. And then the iron goes on and the tool slides out. I start working on a new one while the iron's doing its job. This thing will not get hot if you slide it out as soon as the iron goes on. Then I've got a beautiful tip. Now, another thing I do is, that's different, after I've made that pointed end, I repeat the process at the other end. With traditional Dresdens, that skinny end of the wedge is raw, and we have to cover it with applique. Piecers who are attracted to Dresdens aren't necessarily thrilled at the idea of applique. So over on this little owl quilt, you'll see that I don't have an applique center here. These points are finished in the same way as the outside points. So that opens up a whole bunch of opportunities. So when the points are double pointed, then I'm back to the sewing machine. On light colored starched fabric, I trace the foundation from the book. If you've worked from the Ringy Dingy pattern or the Disappearing Dresden's pattern, you know the drill here. The edge of the wedge goes out the line. So I put this first one right side up, put the next one right side down, abutting to that next line. Stitch a 1/4 inch, flip. Now, if this is far away from that line, we need to correct that seam. If it is on the line, then yippee skippy. If it's a little bit off, well, the next wedge goes on the line. So we correct, because it's kind of a problem traditionally. We sew a bunch of wedges together, they don't lay down flat. And so when we correct, we put the next wedge on the line every time. It corrects all the way around, and then those rings lay nice and flat. So there's one more tip I want to share with you. So how do we put it on the quilt? Well, I quilt the quilt first, and then I lay the Dresden ring or partial unit on, and then I stitch in the ditch, and that affixes it to the quilted quilt. But I don't start and stop on every ditch. I'll sew this ditch and then march across here to the next ditch and sew that ditch and pull this back and march across to the next ditch and so on, so that I have only one start and stop per Dresden unit. And on this one I did another special thing here at the edge. I put the piping and binding on before I put the Dresdens on, and then I wrapped them around to the back, and they're just hand sewn on the back. So those are some of the new ideas in the book. There are more, and I'm very excited about it. I'm very proud of it. My 14 testers did a great job helping me put out a really nice book, and I'd love for you to give it a try.
Thanks, Susan. And Susan Cleveland again, and you will recognize her quilt. It's on the side of Prairie Quilt. These are her beautiful Dresdens. I can't wait to do them.